New York City, chaos.
I am that identifiable soul that can't find its way home. That was afraid of the dark and scared to be alone. I couldn't enunciate my R's. I swung on monkey bars. I daydreamed of stars and owning property on Mars. I am a member of that group that created his own slang. Some say I do my thing, but I be doing my thing. Some call me top-notch because I play Skelly and hopscotch, and I just discovered manhood by holding my crotch. I'm the first one to start a rumor that her fetus had a tumor. I'm that #1 consumer to wear Adidas and suede Pumas. Check my sneakers, yo. I'm that one that stood in the corner drinking for the hell of it. Teasing teens because they're virgins, but since birth I've been celibate. I used to pop and do the wops since the invention of breakdancing. Flat-chested women I used to be romancing. And as I drunk my 40, I leaned to the side to look sporty. And everybody I knew was named Yo Shorty. Yo Shorty. Who am I? I created whirlwinds out of women, tear egos off their limbs. Still have time to bust a rhyme and sing Christian hymns. I gave Columbus a tour for he didn't have a clue. I taught the art of war to a man named Sun Tzu. The Romans tried to capture me and I saw them bear arms. Then I perplexed them permanently by pushing pyramids out my palms. King Tut couldn't handle this. And here's something for the funnies. I wrapped pharaohs into bandages and had them crying for their mummies. Upon my arrival they called me a disciple. I drunk from King James' cup and spat words from the Bible. Since creation I concoct equations for fun. All persuasion said how amazing is that raisin in the sun. So to ask me who I am, you must believe in fiction. To imagine what can't be fathomed has to be your addiction. They pin me from arm to arm and plan my crucifixion. But I am the bearer of eternal life. They can't cause me no affliction. Traveling through time and space with grace beyond man's jurisdiction. With the letters L-I-O-N on my throat as an inscription. So if anyone comes through that door and asks for my description, tell them I'm a dark-skinned black king that walks like an Egyptian.
A brief history of migration in the Caribbean. The Europeans came to the Caribbean in the 15th century looking for spices, gold, silver, and precious stones. According to Christopher Columbus, the world was round, and if he traveled to the west, he would reach the east. When he first arrived in the New World, according to him, in 1942, he was positive that he had arrived at east by his western route, so he named the islands the West Indies. The people were Indians. The area was named the Caribbean after the Caribs, Taínos, and Arawaks had migrated from Central and South America and were among the first people to live on the West Indian Islands. On Columbus' second voyage to the Caribbean in 1943, he was accompanied by a larger number of Spaniards, whose mission was to settle in Hispaniola, which is currently split between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, to be farmers. After migrating to Hispaniola, the Spaniards spread out to take over other Caribbean islands. By the 16th century, the indigenous people of the Caribbean were declining. They were made to work as slaves by the Spaniards. Many died shortly after by beatings, starvation, overwork, and diseases that were introduced by the Europeans. To replace the Caribs, the Europeans recruited white European indentured laborers, both men and women, to work on the sugar plantation. However, as laborers, they were unsuccessful, and so over 10 million Africans were taken to the New World to take their place in the sugar colonies. By the early 20th century, the Caribbean islands had a variety of ethnicities and nationalities. This made the Caribbean different from any of the other colonies. This all started when Christopher Columbus decided to migrate to the Caribbean.
And this piece is called Migration. This is the story of Zahra Naqvi. The flight was from Karachi to Singapore and then Singapore to Vancouver, and I was 7 and it was my first plane ride. The lady 2 seats from me was bright smiled and winked at me, and I'd sneak peeks at her down the aisle because her hair was a color I'd never seen before, blonde. She spoke to me kindly, at least I think so, because I hadn't yet learned English, but I had learned to read smiles. Now the strange thing is she kept giving me pens. Ever so often she would turn around and hand me a pen, gel pens, ballpoints, even fountain pens, and she would say something, but all I registered was that she had an impressive collection of pens. With ESL came the delightful feeling of new meanings and sounds. My T's and D's were still harsh, and I said computer in Canada. We were constantly lost because my parents didn't know what an exit on a highway meant. And I got a lot of strange looks when I insisted that I was Asian, because I thought all those from Asia were Asian. And though my teacher told me I was not yet ready to read the Junie B. Jones books, I still read them. By fourth grade, my T's and D's had softened, and it was not Urdu that spilled first from my mouth, but English. And if that's around the time it happened, I learned I was an immigrant. When my desk group named our team the Canadians, a blonde-haired Tyler seemed confused and protested, "But Zahra's not Canadian." I wasn't clever enough to ask him what made one Canadian. If one had to be indigenous to the land, and the only people of true Canadian status are the First Nations, and see how nicely the immigrants treated them. Yes, I'm an immigrant from a long line of immigrants. The feet of my ancestors constantly moved from the dusty deserts of Arabia to the mountain ranges of Persia, to the spicy heat of India, and across the border trying to heal scars of colonialism to Pakistan. My plane ride to Vancouver was just another step. There are too many intricate connections and loyalties and histories and cultures and mixes of languages and colors to pin the hue of my skin to one land. So I will forever proudly be an immigrant if it means I'm a traveler. And just like my ancestors infused my blood with movement, I will pass on this legacy of migration to my children. I will tell them, move, go forth, because if you stay in one place for too long, your feet will grow thick roots until you can move no longer. So strap on your boots and move. Do not let documents and custom lines and airports define you. Do not be so partial to one color, because your own blood is a mix of so many flavors that you'll only be betraying some part of yourself. And don't you ever complain of homesickness unless you're in outer space, because the earth is your homeland. The only nation you need to be patriotic to, and your family is every person you can speak in smiles to, the land, the people you must be loyal to. Make friends with the stars so you're never lonely, and set foot in borders you're told you're foreign to, and remind them there was a time long ago when there were no borders. And in forums when they ask you to circle your race, always write humanity. Remember, your mother set foot in a new country with pockets full of pens long before she knew she was a writer. And just the same, you keep your pockets empty so you can fill them up with symbolism. Now carry the name Naqvi like a backpack full of stories, and I'll be listening and making sure that your feet are never still. Thank you.